On today's show, there have been a lot of reports that the Cavs could keep the core four together. I'll tell you why that could be a good idea.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. You can find the show wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. And you can watch the show for free on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to whatever podcast platform you prefer. Give the show a thumbs up on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube as well. That's the best way you can help to grow the show. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. I'm Danny Cunningham. You might know me from covering the Cavs at places such as Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, or Once Upon a Time at ESPN Cleveland. Great show lined up for today. There's been a lot of reporting out there that the Cavs might want to hang on to all four members of the core four. So we're talking Donovan Mitchell, who the team wants to hang on to, wants to have signed a contract extension this summer. They feel very confident about that. There's been a ton of reporting surrounding that, and we'll dive into that a little bit more as well. Darius Garland, his all-star mate in the backcourt, Jarrett Allen at center, and Evan Mobley alongside him in the front court. So there's been a lot of reporting that the Cavs are not necessarily as open for business as I think a lot of people, myself included, have expected them to be as this offseason is right on the horizon, as we are getting much closer to free agency. And while I don't necessarily agree with this line of thinking, as you guys are getting to know me and getting to hear some of my takes, I think that's been rather clear that I think the best path forward for the Cavs is to do some reshuffling of talent, right? That's the best way that I think they can reach their ceiling or adjust what their ceiling could be even. That said, I do believe that there are reasons why the Cavaliers should think about hanging on to all four members of the core four that I just mentioned. I think one of those reasons is just having a little bit of patience, where we've seen a lot of teams that have had patience where it's paid off. I'll dive into some examples of those on today's show. The contract value or just the value of the individual players as assets, I think is something that is worth bringing up. We will get into that coming up in today's show. But first, I think, and I'm guilty of this too, the NBA has become something that the transaction is something that it gets everyone excited, right? Because that's what we spend so much time talking about. And it's fun to think and to have hope. It's fun to think about the future and have hope that whatever team you root for, in this case, the Cleveland Cavaliers, it's fun to have hope that there are avenues to improve. And it's fun to have hope that the process can be sped up a little bit, right? Where, we take a look back at the Cavs did try and speed up their process when they traded for Donovan Mitchell. They jumped a step or two in their rebuild because of that trade. But what happens when we think about those things as often as we think about those things? What happens is we forget these guys are good basketball players at times. We at times, because we think about these basketball players as what their contracts are, who they could be traded for, that becomes such a big part of the conversation that we can lose sight of, these guys are actually pretty good. And they have been pretty good together so far. Now, maybe they haven't gone as far in the playoffs as people would have hoped. I certainly thought expectations this year for the Cavs should have been to reach the Eastern Conference Finals. They didn't do that. They fell short of my preseason expectations. But that doesn't mean that this group of basketball players isn't good. That doesn't mean that you have to break them up for sure. When you go down this list of basketball players in the core four, Donovan Mitchell, I think his resume speaks for itself. He's the guy you have to bring up first. He's the guy that the Cavs most want to hang on to. He is the guy that at this point is the centerpiece of the franchise. The Cavs want to sign him to a max contract extension. I think that is something that will happen this summer. I think a lot of people around the NBA are of the belief that will happen this summer. If you notice, you're starting to see fewer and fewer fake trades out there. And, we did a couple of fake trade episodes last week with Greg Schwartz of Bleacher Report. But you're starting to see fewer and fewer fake trades across the NBA from insiders, if you will, that involve Donovan Mitchell. Because I think the likelihood of him leaving Cleveland is not nearly as high as what people had expected it to be. But you talk about him as part of this, just being a good basketball player. Yes, he's only made one All-NBA team. I believe if he were healthy all year long, he would have been an All-NBA player again this year. He was certainly trending in that direction. But since he's been in Cleveland, he's been, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of a lot of people, a top 10 player in basketball. Last year, he finished 6th in MVP voting. This year, he was on his way to being named an All-NBA player again. So he's a really good basketball player. And what you don't want to do is trade away really good basketball players. And of course, trading Donovan Mitchell has never been something the Cavs want to or should want to do. That is something I've been firmly against. I think everyone that is a Cavs fan, for the most part, is pretty firmly against. So let's go down the list because we already know what Donovan is. I don't need to explain his resume any further for you. Yeah, Darius Garland had a bad season this year. He did. I've characterized it as a nightmare of a season. Nothing went his way. I thought he started to find a rhythm and then boom, fractured his jaw in December. He comes back. He's never right. He was never able to really find his rhythm. He struggled to put the weight back on that he lost when he couldn't eat solid food for roughly 4 weeks. That's a really tough season. But I'm not of the belief that just because Darius Garland had a rough season, that he's no longer a really good basketball player. That I don't think this season is who Darius Garland is as an NBA player. And it's not to say that I think his ceiling is still as high as maybe I once upon a time did. Like I thought, and I came on this podcast as a guest before, and I talked about how I thought there were all NBA teams in Darius Garland's future. I believe that. That was prior to the Donovan Mitchell trade. I'm not so sure that I still believe that to be the case, but I do believe that there are still all-star teams in Darius Garland's future. Like, I still think he's that caliber of player. But as he comes off of what was unquestionably a rough season for him, is now really the best time to move on from him? I don't necessarily think that it is. And I also do believe that we have seen certain things that lead us to believe Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland in the backcourt together, while it hasn't been perfect, it can work. And it has produced some pretty good results. Like Donovan has played the best basketball of his career alongside Darius. Darius last year, I thought was really, really good. And then I'm willing to, because of what he has shown over the last 3 or 4 years, throw this season out the window. I don't think it matters for the long-term future of him. I think you can forget about this season with him. He's still a really good basketball player. And what did I say about Donovan Mitchell? I can say it about Darius Garland. You don't always just want to trade away good basketball players. And then you move on to the front court, where Jarrett Allen, I thought even though he was an all-star in the 2021-22 season, I thought this year was the best year of his career. I thought Jarrett Allen, this past season for the Cavs, played the best basketball that he has ever played. Do you want to move on from that type of player just because? I can see why it might make sense to not do that. I can totally see why that might be the best idea to say, hey, yeah, the fit might not be perfect. And it's not perfect between him and Evan Mobley. I think anyone that watches basketball can see that fit is not perfect. But Jarrett Allen is a really good basketball player. He's a really, really good basketball player. And it doesn't always make sense to trade really good basketball players just to trade really good basketball players. And then lastly, with Evan Mobley, you're talking about a guy there who, he is somebody that in year 2 was a Defensive Player of the Year finalist. As a second-year player, that is incredibly difficult to do. Incredibly difficult. Yes, Offensively, he has not come along the way that we all thought he would come along. He's not become a guy that can go out there on a nightly basis and get you 25 points in the way that myself and I think a lot of people expected him to be able to do. Maybe that's still is in his future, but I think that moving on from someone like him would be a sort of a careless decision in roster building, because just because this past season was riddled with injuries for him, I don't think it's changed his ceiling. And I do think that because the playoff success hasn't been what everyone wanted it to be in Cleveland, that there are times we forget just how good these basketball players are. And yeah, the fit's not perfect, but if you're making a trade here, you can't guarantee you're going to get, you might be able to get a better fit back, but you can't guarantee you're going to get the same level of talent back. So that's reason number one as to why I think that, while overall, I'm probably in the bucket of wanting to rearrange the talent, but that's reason number one why, hey, maybe it could make sense to keep all four of these guys together. Reason number two, sometimes you just got to be patient. I'll tell you about that next right here on Locked On Cavs. But today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs is the place to be. They know what it's like when you're hiring for a small business and you want to find quality professionals. Because they know what it's like, they've helped you be in the place that you need to be. You've got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They've got the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster. We all like speed. We all like efficiency, right? And for free. I have been someone in my past, not right now, not looking for jobs right now, very happy here at Locked On Cavs, but I've been someone that's been looking for jobs. And the first place I have gone when I've been out of work or just searching for something different has been LinkedIn Jobs. They're my go-to when I'm searching for a new situation to be in. And I like to think I'm the type of person, if you're hiring, that you should be looking for. Well, if I'm the type of person that you should be looking for and I'm on LinkedIn Jobs, that means you should probably be looking on LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn is not just another job board, okay? It's not. It's got a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals. It's billion with a B. It's a lot of people. And that makes it the place to hire. Gives you access to professionals you cannot find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process very easy. Hiring is easy when you've got that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of job openings at small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Post your job for free today at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA, LockedOnNBA, and you can post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. So the second reason that I do think it would be smart for the Cavs to keep the core four intact is that the process can be rushed at times in the NBA, where we live in a world, I just talked about how we've become so transactionally based when it comes to the NBA. But the other thing that I think happens, and the Cavs were a little guilty of this when they traded for Donovan Mitchell, but teams will try and skip steps. They will try and vault themselves from maybe not necessarily a lottery team, but they'll try and go from a first round out team to a champion like that. And that's not something that happens very often. It doesn't. You have to, in the NBA, more often than not. And I really think that in this situation, the only exception to this rule over the last couple of decades has been LeBron James. Like, that has been the exception. And even LeBron, when he has joined a new team, hasn't won championships in the first year. But he's been sort of that exception there, right? But look at right now. So game 5 of the finals tonight between the Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks. Well, the Boston Celtics have been in the conference finals a bunch of years consecutively. They went to the finals in 2022. And they have not yet won a title. Maybe they do tonight. They have an opportunity tonight to win a title, but they've made a bunch of playoff runs that they've come up short. And while they've made moves on the margins, some pretty good moves, especially recently this past offseason, what they didn't do was separate their core. Now, their core wasn't as big as the Cavs is, but they didn't separate Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And really, I know Al Horford was away for a little bit, but they brought him back and he's part of that core. They upgraded at role players, and they've got, I think, the best role players in basketball, and guys like Drew Holiday and Derek White and Kristaps Porzingis. But they didn't separate their core. And then you go to Dallas, where Dallas has had this sort of slow buildup to the first few years. Now, I know not Luka's first year in the NBA, but after that, they lost early in the playoffs a couple times. And then they go on a run to the Western Conference Finals a couple years ago. And then last year, they missed the playoffs entirely. And now they find themselves in the NBA Finals. They've done some rearranging, certainly. I know that trade for Kyrie Irving was a big one. But you have to be patient here. Look at the Denver Nuggets, the team that won the title just a year ago. They were a team that they had come up short several years in a row. In the bubble, they lost in the conference finals. The year before that, or 2 years before that, they lost a game 82 to the Minnesota Timberwolves that would have gotten them in the playoffs. Instead, they're in the lottery. It took them some time to build up, and it took them some opportunities to get playoff experience together as a group before they were able to get to that next level. If you even want to go as far back as, the second LeBron era here, we all think of Golden State as this dynastic team, and they were, certainly. But before that, they had playoff failures too. In fact, they were in a pretty similar situation to what the Cavs are in right now, where in consecutive years, and their order was reversed to the Cavs, but they lost in the first and second round of the playoffs, fired their coach, but they kept their core together. And then they went out and they won the finals. And then the year after that, they won 73 games and blew a 3-1 lead in the finals, which everyone obviously very much remembers super vividly. And I have to say right now, all the flashbacks that are popping up, as I record this on Sunday, it's the anniversary of Game 6 of that series. So like when I open Instagram or Twitter or YouTube or whatever, I just see highlights from the specific games and get to relive those moments, and it's awesome. But that Golden State team wasn't one that was just instantly good. It took time to grow. And then when Kevin Durant arrived, in the summer of 2016, that changed things, but that team had already won a title together. Really, the only exceptions to this have been the teams that LeBron has gone to where when he left the Cavs in the summer of 2010 for Miami, that Heat team went to the finals the first year. They didn't win it, but they went to the finals the first year. When LeBron left Miami to come back to Cleveland, the Cavs didn't win the finals that first year. I think they would have if not for some super untimely injuries to Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving. But they won the finals the second year. It still took time, not as much time because LeBron is sort of a microwave of success. But then when he went to the Lakers, that first year they missed the playoffs. Second year they won the title, but that first year they missed the playoffs. These things take time. And sometimes patience is required. And the Cavs not moving on from any members of their core four would be showing some patience in some sense, to where they might believe that the best is yet to come, not just individually for all four of these players, which at least for three of the four, I do believe the best is yet to come. And we'll talk about that fourth coming up in just a minute. But they can realistically look themselves in the mirror and say the best for this group is yet to come, to where, sure, the Boston Celtics right now are a power in the Eastern Conference. But after that, they might not feel as if there's a team that is head and shoulders above them, that is a lock to be the number 2 seed next season. They might feel that way. And if they do, can't necessarily for sure tell them that they're wrong. While I think a lot of people might not believe that, you can't tell them that they're wrong before you see it play out. So that's reason number 2 as to why, it might make sense to keep the core four together. The third reason, I've talked about transactions. When transactions are made in the NBA, A lot of it's about value. And we have to talk about the contract value or the value of the individual assets for the core four next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is also presented to you by PrizePicks. With PrizePicks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. What else would you want to do? What better way is there to spend the summer? I can't think of one. You can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. It's not a lot of time. That's about the time that it's going to take me to get through this read. You can make a lineup and turn $10, like I said, into $1,000. Like that's, so you're going to want to listen to this. If you're looking for promotions too, PrizePicks has you covered every week. They lower select players' stat projections on Tuesday, so that's tomorrow. You know, you might want to jump on that. And that obviously increases your chances of winning. On Fridays, if you don't put together a good lineup, if you lose, you can get your entry fees back. So there's some really good stuff, but you just need to pick stat projections, more or less, on between 2 and 6 players, and you could be a winner. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. You can get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. The finals mean more on PrizePicks, and so do star players. You get boosted payouts on select basketball stars, and you won't find that anywhere else. When the finals are over, though, hoops action does not stop on PrizePicks. Women's basketball, obviously still ongoing. You've got Caitlin Clark, Breanna Stewart, Asia Wilson, so much. You could win up to 100 times your cash by watching those ladies ball out. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA. PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So the other thing that we do have to touch on when we talk about keeping the core four intact, keeping them together, is when you come off of a bad season, the way that someone like Darius Garland did, even though I don't believe that's who Darius Garland is, I know a lot of people don't believe that's who Darius Garland is. It was just a bad season with a brighter future ahead. That means his value on the trade market isn't what it maybe was 12 months ago. And this is sort of like a stock market situation where you always want to buy low and sell high, right? So for me, I don't think trading Donovan Mitchell is a conversation. I don't think trading Evan Mobley is a conversation. So that leads you with 2 of the 4 members that you can talk about. One of which is Darius Garland. And I don't think his value right now on the trade market is what it should be. I think right now it's probably in the valley, if you want to, peaks and valley type terms. It's probably pretty low. If you give him another year in Cleveland, maybe it works out and maybe you want him on the Cavs for the rest of his career. I'm not saying that's going to be the case. I don't know, but just he could, and I think it's pretty likely, have a much better season in 2024, 2025 than he did in 2023, 2024. I would bet on Darius Garland bouncing back and having a terrific season this year, whether he's in a Cavs uniform or a Brooklyn Nets uniform, or a Minnesota Timberwolves uniform, or you name the uniform. I would bet Darius Garland is a better basketball player this upcoming season than he was this past season. So when that's the case, you don't often want to be the team that trades away that guy. You don't. Because you are not getting back what that player is actually worth. And I don't know that if the Cavs traded Darius Garland July 1st, that they would receive back proper value for him. I can't say that they would for sure. I can't. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But I also think teams might be a little hesitant to pay up what Darius Garland's worth on the trade market. To where if you are a rival team negotiating with Cavs president of basketball operations Kobe Altman about a Darius Garland trade, your rebuttal to whatever the first offer is is going to be, well, how do we know Darius Garland is going to be the guy that was an all-star and not the guy that was on the court last season? How do we know that? That's going to be a rebuttal. On the flip side, though, I think that's when you talk about someone like Jarrett Allen, who I think is coming off of the best season of his career. And I'm not sure how much better Jarrett Allen is going to get, or how much more worth he's going to have on the trade market, considering he's got a very team-friendly contract for his level of skill. For his play on the court, he is absolutely a bargain of a contract. And I think that is something that when you're negotiating with rival teams, that is a feather in the cap of the Cavs, to where if they are going to have to move off of Jarrett Allen this offseason, it's going to have to come at a very hefty price, which means other teams might not want to pay what the Cavs would need to get back from Jarrett Allen. And all of those things are reasons as to why keeping the core four intact could make sense. Because Jarrett Allen's a really good basketball player. Darius Garland, I still believe, is a really good basketball player. You're not giving these guys away for nothing. You're not trading them just to trade them. And if the right deal isn't out there, then yeah, I think to some extent, keeping this core four intact makes some sense. And I understand why the Cavaliers might want to go into this offseason with that being their line of thinking. I totally get it. Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Again, I'm Danny Cunningham. You can find me on Twitter at RealDCunningham, also at Cleveland Magazine at 92.3 The Fan. Very much appreciate you guys. It's been a great so far 2 weeks doing Locked On Cavs, and you guys have been awesome. I do want to do another mailbag coming up at the end of this week. So if you've got questions for the mailbag, drop them on YouTube in the comments section below. Just tag for mailbag at the start of your comment, or you can tweet at me at RealDCunningham or at Locked On Cavs on Twitter if you want to get questions in. But I will be doing a mailbag episode coming up a little bit later on this week. Going to have some draft talk. Hopefully Wednesday and Thursday we'll be doing draft, as well as, we have to keep you guys updated on the comings and goings of the coaching search that is still ongoing as I record this on Sunday night. But on tomorrow's show, unless there is some big coaching news, tomorrow's show, I'm going to basically talk about why the core four should be split up. I talked all show today about why it should be kept intact. I'm going to play devil's advocate on tomorrow's show. So stay tuned for that. Keep it right here. Locked On Cavs. Again, I'm Danny Cunningham. Appreciate you making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Have a great week lined up for you. Have a great Monday, everybody.